The kind of power he held never announced itself. It did not shout. It did not threaten. It did not need to. It lived in the pause between words, in the way conversations stopped when he entered a room, in the instinctive lowering of eyes from men who had ordered deaths with a single phone call of their own. His silence was not emptiness. It was command. He sat alone at the far end of the room, unmoving, while the city burned with noise beneath him. 40 floors below, sirens wailed, engines screamed, people lived loudly and desperately. Up here, behind reinforced glass and soundproof walls, there was nothing but stillness. The kind he preferred. The kind that obeyed him. They called him the king, though never to his face unless invited. Not because he demanded it, but because no other title fit. Kings ruled through bloodlines and crowns. He ruled through inevitability. When he decided something, it happened. When he spoke, it ended. And when he said nothing at all, people panicked far more than if he had shouted. Cruelty was easy. Any man could be cruel. Violence was loud and sloppy and beneath him. What terrified people was his restraint, his ability to watch without reacting, to listen without responding, to let a man talk himself into ruin while he simply waited. He leaned back in his chair, fingers loosely steepled, eyes fixed on the dark glass that reflected his own image back at him. Tall, broad, immaculately controlled. A scar traced along his face like a reminder etched into stone. There was nothing soft about him, nothing unfinished. He had built himself this way deliberately. Attachment was a flaw. He had learned that lesson early and learned it well. The people who loved were the ones who begged, the ones who hesitated, the ones who died screaming the names of others. Love made men predictable. Fearless men were dangerous. Detached men were unstoppable. So he kept his distance from everything that might reach him. Women came and went without leaving fingerprints. Alliances were transactional. Loyalty was purchased and reinforced with consequence. Even the men closest to him did not know him. They knew his rules, his patterns, his reputation. That was enough. He liked it that way. The room around him was a monument to control. Every object chosen with intent. Heavy furniture that grounded the space. Curtains thick enough to swallow sound. Doors that locked from the inside. Art that had been taken, not bought. Proof that he did not ask permission. From this height, the city looked small. Contained. Like something he could crush in his palm if he chose. That perspective had always comforted him. It reminded him that nothing down there could truly reach him. That he was above consequence, above surprise, above weakness. He believed that completely. Surprises were for lesser men, for men who hoped instead of planned, for men who trusted. He did not trust. Loneliness crept in occasionally, but he had learned to misname it. He called it discipline. He called it clarity. He told himself the hollow space inside his chest was simply the cost of power, a necessary sacrifice. Kings did not get companionship. They got obedience. And obedience was quieter. He had everything a man could want by the standards of the world. Wealth that could erase problems. Influence that bent laws. Enemies who feared him enough to sleep lightly. Nothing was missing. Nothing mattered. Or so he told himself. There were moments, rare and fleeting, when the silence pressed too close. When the stillness felt less like control and more like absence. When the glass reflected not a ruler, but a man who had built walls so high he no longer remembered what they were keeping out. He dismissed those thoughts as weakness, indulgence. He had no time for introspection. Power did not tolerate doubt. He rose from his chair and adjusted his cufflinks with precise movements, already dismissing the evening as routine. Another debt. Another warning. Another reminder to the world of who ruled it. Nothing new ever happened anymore. Nothing could touch him. Nothing could surprise him. That belief settled over him like armor as he turned toward the door, unaware that before the night ended, the silence he ruled would fracture. That something small and terrified and impossibly brave would step into his controlled world and make him question the one thing he had never doubted. That the man who believed himself untouchable was about to be reached. The door opened without ceremony, and the silence bent, but did not break. Two men entered first, moving with the careful restraint of those who knew better than to make noise in this room. Their footsteps were measured, their faces empty. But it was the figure between them that shifted the air. She stumbled once and caught herself refusing help even as her balance faltered. Her hands were bound in front of her, not roughly, but firmly enough to make a point. She was smaller than the room, smaller than the men, smaller than the moment. But she stood anyway, shoulders back, chin lifted, like she had decided something on the way here and would not be shaken from it. He noticed that first. Not her fear, not the tremble in her breath, not the way her pulse jumped at her throat. Her refusal to collapse. The men stopped several steps from his desk and waited. They did not speak. They did not need to. He lifted his eyes, slowly letting the moment stretch, letting the weight of his attention settle on her like pressure. Most people broke under it. She did not. Her eyes met his for one heartbeat, then another, wide, dark, and burning with something that was not panic. She was afraid, yes. But it was not the empty kind. It was the fear of someone standing at the edge of something irreversible. "Who is this?" he asked quietly. The words were soft, but they carried. One of the men spoke her name, Isolina Rasso. The name meant nothing to him at first, and that annoyed him. Names usually came with history, with numbers, with blood. But this one arrived bare. Why is she here? The men hesitated, and he felt it immediately. That pause irritated him more than a lie would have. She spoke before they could. "I asked to come." Her voice was unsteady, but clear. The sound of it threaded through the room in a way that made his attention sharpen. "You asked," he repeated. "Yes." The men glanced at each other, uncertain now. That was new. No one asked to be here. No one volunteered for this room. Why, he asked, his gaze never leaving her face. "Because running would have been easier," she said, "and I am tired of easy things that leave people broken behind me." The words landed wrong, not defiant, not pleading, something else, something heavier. One of the men shifted and finally spoke. "Her father owed money. He disappeared. She did not." That earned a flicker of interest. "So you came instead?" "Yes." There it was, that quiet strength again, the kind that did not raise its voice, but did not bend either. He studied her, slowly cataloging the details without touching them: torn sleeve, bare feet, scraped raw hair loose, and tangled from hands that had not been gentle with her. She had been brought, not invited, and yet she stood as if this had been her decision all along. "You understand where you are?" he asked. "I do." "And what that means?" "I do." That surprised him more than he liked. Most people begged by now, or tried to explain, or cried. She did none of it. She only watched him like she was waiting for a verdict she had already accepted. "What makes you think you can stand here and speak to me like this?" he asked. She inhaled once, steadying herself. "Because you have not told me to be silent." Something cold and sharp moved through him, not anger, not desire, recognition. He leaned back in his chair, at last folding his hands together. "You know who I am?" "Yes." "And you still chose this?" "Yes." The men waited for his order, for dismissal, for violence, for finality, but he did not give it. Instead, he looked at her a moment longer than necessary, searching for the lie that should have been there, the manipulation, the calculation. There was none. Only resolve born of desperation, and something that looked dangerously like courage. "Untie her," he said. The men froze, then obeyed, quickly stepping back once it was done. She flexed her hands, feeling the circulation return, but did not step away. She stayed exactly where she was. Interesting, he thought without smiling. Very interesting. For the first time in a long while, something inside him shifted, not fear, not excitement, but uncertainty. And he hated that more than anything, because nothing was supposed to surprise him anymore. The silence after the men left felt heavier than before, like the room itself was listening. She stood where they had released her hands, not moving, not speaking, waiting. He noticed that too. Most people rushed to fill silence with words, with excuses, with promises. She did not. She treated it like a test. "You came to offer yourself," he said at last. She nodded once. "Not your body," he continued, watching her closely. "Not yet, not like that." Her breath caught, but she did not look away. You came to offer your presence. Yes, she said quietly. Interesting. He rose from his chair, slowly, deliberately letting her feel the shift in power. As he crossed the room, he stopped a few steps away, close enough for her to feel his shadow, but far enough that he did not touch her. People who owe me money do not negotiate, he said. They disappear, or they pay, or they break. I know, she replied. Then why are you still standing? Because I cannot disappear, she said, and I cannot pay, and breaking would only make you lose what you are owed. That earned a pause. Explain. She swallowed, once steadying herself. My father ran. He left behind nothing that matters. But I am still here. If you destroy me, you gain nothing. If you keep me alive, you gain leverage. He studied her carefully, now stripping away the surface fear, the fatigue, the bruises, looking for the calculation underneath. You think of yourself as leverage. I think of myself as responsibility, she said, and I am willing to carry it. Dangerous words. Responsibility implied choice. It implied weight. It implied agency. And he was not used to people walking into his world with any of those intact. You would stay here, he said slowly. If that is the price. Under my roof. Yes. Under my rules. Yes. No contact with the outside world. Yes. No leaving without permission. Yes. No protection, except what I choose to give. She hesitated just long enough for him to notice, then she nodded. Yes. You understand that agreeing does not make you safe, he said. She looked up at him, finally really looked at him, and in her eyes he did not see illusion, he saw clarity. I understand that safety was never part of this. Something tightened in his chest. He ignored it. He turned away, walking back toward his desk, needing distance, needing control. The moment stretched thin. This is not mercy, he said. It is containment. You will not be treated like a guest. You will not be treated like a prisoner. Then what will I be, she asked. He stopped. That was the wrong question. And yet it was the only one that mattered. You will be mine, he said finally, not owned, not harmed, but claimed within these walls. Her face paled, but she did not step back. For how long, she asked. Until the debt is paid. How will it be paid? By your compliance, by your silence, by your willingness to exist where I place you. She nodded again, smaller this time. I accept. You accept without knowing the cost. I accept because I know the cost of refusing. He turned to face her again, something unreadable moving behind his eyes. Very well. He pressed a button on his desk, the door opened, and one man stepped inside, waiting. Prepare a room, he said, lower floor guarded, but comfortable, everything she needs. The man nodded and left. She remained standing, as if unsure whether she was allowed to sit or breathe. You will be watched, he added. Any attempt to run will end badly. I will not run, she said. We will see. He gestured toward the door. You belong here now. She took one step, then stopped, turning back to him. Why are you doing this, she asked. He looked at her for a long moment, then he answered honestly. Because you walked into a place people crawl out of, and you did not beg. She absorbed that quietly, then turned and walked away. When the door closed behind her, the silence returned thicker than before. He did not move for a long time. Something had shifted, he could feel it. He had made a bargain that did not feel like business. And for the first time in years, he wondered if he had just invited chaos into a world built on control. The house learned her before she learned it. That was how it always worked here. The walls remembered footsteps, the air memorized breathing patterns. The silence adjusted itself to new presence like a living thing, deciding whether to accept an intruder or crush them. She moved carefully at first, always aware of eyes. Even when she could not see them, cameras were hidden. But she felt them anyway. She learned which hallways echoed, and which swallowed sound, which doors were never locked, and which never opened at all. He watched without announcing it. From doorways, from the upper level, from the quiet reflection in dark glass, he learned her rhythms, the way she woke before sunrise, the way she paused, before entering any room the way she touched objects lightly, as if afraid to leave fingerprints. She did not wander. That intrigued him. Most people tested boundaries. She did not. She stayed within the invisible lines, as if she understood them instinctively, as if she had spent her life navigating spaces where one wrong step could change everything. She read, often sitting near the windows on the lower floor, curled into herself with books that were older than she was. He noticed the way her expression softened when she read, how fear drained from her eyes, when she was lost in something that was not this place. It irritated him more than it should have. He had expected desperation, bargaining attempts at charm or obedience. Instead, she gave him quiet endurance, the kind that did not perform, the kind that survived. At meals, she ate what was given without comment, not rushed, not greedy, not apologetic. She thanked the staff with her eyes, not her voice, as if she knew words carried weight here. And she never asked questions. That unsettled him more than pleading ever could. On the fourth night, an argument broke out in one of the outer rooms. Raised voices, a man, forgetting where he was forgetting, who ruled the silence. She heard it too. He watched from the upper level as she stiffened, fingers tightening around the edge of her chair. Her instinct was not to hide it, was to listen, to understand. The shouting ended abruptly, as it always did. She exhaled slowly, then returned to her book. Something about that stayed with him. Later that night, she crossed paths with him for the first time, alone in the hallway. He had not planned it, but he did not avoid it either. She froze when she saw him. Not with panic, but with awareness, like prey that had learned the shape of the hunter and accepted it. "You are awake," he said. "Yes." "You do not sleep much." "Neither do you," she replied, before she could stop herself. The words hung between them, heavy with risk. He waited for apology. It did not come. She simply stood there, shoulders squared, bracing for consequence. Instead, he nodded. "Sleep is inefficient," he said. Her lips twitched before she could hide it. That was the moment he realized she was still human. Still capable of reaction, even. "Do you fear me?" he asked. She hesitated, this time longer. "Yes," she said honestly. "Good," he replied. "Fear keeps people alive." She looked at him, then truly looked, not challenging, not submissive, searching. "But it is not the only thing that keeps people alive," she said quietly. He stepped closer, then stopped, leaving a careful distance. "And what else does?" he asked. She thought for a moment, then answered. "Purpose." The word landed with unexpected force. He dismissed her with a gesture, and she left without another glance, but the echo of that word followed him back to his office and stayed long after she disappeared down the corridor. Purpose. He had built an empire without it, replaced it with control and consequence, and now a woman who should have been broken walked his halls with nothing but quiet resolve and called it purpose. That night he did not sleep, not because of danger or business or enemies, but because for the first time in a long while he wondered what she would become in his world, and what he might become because of her. The first time she truly ran was not from him but toward him. It happened just after midnight, when the house was at its quietest, when even the guards moved like shadows, and the walls breathed slow and steady. She had been asleep, curled beneath unfamiliar blankets, when the sound tore through her rest. Glass shattering. Not close, not distant, somewhere in between, the kind of sound that made instinct wake before thought. She was on her feet before fear could catch her, heart racing, bare feet hitting cold stone. As she moved into the hallway, she did not scream, she did not hide. She followed the sound because that was who she was, someone who faced what frightened her even when it made no sense. He was already there, standing at the end of the corridor, motionless, as men rushed past him, voices, low, urgent, weapons drawn. His presence cut through the chaos. Like gravity, everything bent toward him, even danger. "Stay back," he said without turning. She stopped immediately, but she did not retreat. "What is it?" she asked. He glanced at her, then just as quickly back to the men. "Someone tested the perimeter, nothing serious." That was a lie. She heard it, she felt it in the way his shoulders were set, in the way the guards spread wider than usual, in the way the air tasted sharp. You should go back to your room, he said. She shook her head before thinking, I will not be safer there. That surprised him enough that he looked at her fully. Why, he asked. Because if something happens, I want to know why, she said simply. I do not want to be a thing hidden away and protected without understanding. The words cut closer than he liked. He studied her for a long moment, then turned sharply toward the nearest guard secure the lower wing, clear the east cameras again. The man nodded and ran. You trust me very little, he said to her. I trust you with my life, she replied quietly. I do not trust you with the truth yet. Something flickered in his eyes, then something harder followed. You think truth makes people safer. I think lies make them blind. He did not answer that. Instead, he gestured sharply. Come. She hesitated only a second, then followed, staying close. But not touching, they moved through the corridor toward the security room, a place few outsiders ever saw. The walls glowed with monitors showing every angle of the estate, every shadow, every movement. She stopped short when she saw the screens. This is your world, she whispered. Yes, he said. And someone tried to enter it. Someone tested it, he corrected, not knowing what it would cost. As if summoned by his words, a sharp sound echoed from one of the screens. A guard taking down a figure near the outer gate. The struggle was brief, violent, controlled. She flinched. He noticed. You wanted to understand, he said. I do, she replied, though her voice trembled. Then look. She forced herself to watch as the intruder was restrained and removed efficiently, without spectacle, without mercy, but without cruelty. Either it was power without rage that frightened her more than violence would have. When it was over, the room fell silent again. Her hands were shaking. She clasped them together, trying to stop it. He watched her carefully, waiting for revulsion, for accusation, for retreat. Instead, she spoke. You could have killed him. Yes. But you did not. No. Why? Because fear spreads faster than blood, he said, because a man who lives remembers who spared him. She looked at him, then something shifted in her expression. You chose restraint. He frowned slightly. That is not how my choices are usually described. Maybe they should be, she said. The words landed softly, but they stayed. A guard entered and spoke quietly. All clear, boss. False alarm, someone desperate, not organized. He nodded and dismissed the man, then he turned back to her. You should be afraid now, he said. I am, she admitted. But you are still here. Yes. Why? She took a breath, steadying herself. Because you stood between me and danger, without asking for anything in return. That stopped him. That was not how he saw it. He protected what was his, because that was order, but hearing it spoken aloud changed something. I did not do it for you, he said automatically. I know, she replied, that is why it matters. The silence between them deepened, but it was no longer empty. It was charged, full of unspoken things. Go back to your room, he said more gently this time. She nodded, then paused. Thank you, she said. For what? For showing me who you are when no one is watching. She left before he could respond. He remained standing alone in the glow of the monitors, staring at his reflection, fractured across dozens of screens. For the first time, someone had seen his world up close and stayed. And for the first time, he wondered if fear was no longer the only thing binding her to him. The night did not begin with intention. It began with quiet, with the kind of stillness that crept into the house after everything else had settled, after guards changed shifts, after lights dimmed, and even the walls seemed to rest. She was awake when he found her, not because she expected him, but because sleep had learned to avoid her lately. She sat near the window, wrapped in a thin blanket, city lights, painting her face in gold and shadow. When he entered, she looked up slowly, not startled, not prepared, just present. You should be resting, he said. So should you, she replied. He almost smiled and stopped himself. The space between them felt different tonight, heavier, warmer, dangerous, in a way neither of them named. He had been avoiding this moment for days, sensing its approach like pressure beneath skin. You have been distant, she said softly. I have been careful, he replied. Careful with what? With crossing lines that cannot be uncrossed. She rose slowly, and for the first time closed the distance herself. Her steps were hesitant but deliberate, as if each one required a decision. I am tired of living like everything meaningful is a threat, she said. I am tired of being protected from my own choices. He held her gaze, seeing fear there, yes, but also resolve, the same resolve that had brought her into his office weeks ago. You do not know what you are asking for, he said. I am asking you to see me, she answered, not as leverage, not as responsibility, but as a woman who chooses to be here. That choice echoed in him louder than any scream ever had. He reached for her face, then stopped, his hand hovering inches away, asking without words. She nodded. His touch was careful, reverent, as if she were something that might shatter. He had touched many women, but never like this, never with hesitation, never with restraint born of respect, rather than control. Her breath caught at the contact, not in fear, but in surprise, and something else, something overwhelming. They moved together slowly, without urgency, without hunger that needed to consume, only closeness, discovery, learning the shape of each other through warmth and breath. When he kissed her, it was gentle, a question, not a claim. She answered with a soft sound that escaped her before she could stop it. That sound changed everything. It was not practiced, not controlled, not something learned. It was raw and startled, and too honest to be anything but real. When they reached the moment where closeness turned into something deeper, something irreversible, she tensed, then gasped, and then she screamed. It was loud, unrestrained, unguarded. The sound tore through the room like truth breaking glass. He froze. Every instinct in him halted, every muscle locked, as realization crashed into him with brutal clarity. This was not performance. This was not experience. This was not a woman who had learned how to hide herself. This was innocence, colliding with sensation, without armor. He pulled back, immediately searching her face, panic flooding him. Are you hurt? He asked, voice rough. She shook her head, breathless, eyes wide, with confusion and embarrassment. I am sorry, she said quickly. I did not mean to. I did not know it would feel like that. I have never. She stopped, unable to finish. The truth was already there, hanging between them, undeniable. He felt guilt surge through him, sharp and sudden, slicing through desire like ice water. He had crossed into something sacred without knowing it, and the weight of that knowledge crushed him. You did nothing wrong, he said firmly, forcing calm into his voice. She searched his face, fear creeping back, thinking she had ruined something. I scared you, she whispered. Yes, he admitted, because you trusted me with something you did not fully understand, and I should have known. Tears filled her eyes, not from pain, but from vulnerability laid bare. I chose this, she said. Please, do not look at me like I was careless. He gathered her into his arms, holding her carefully, as if the world itself might bruise her. I am not afraid of you, he said. I am afraid of myself. She went still against him, listening. I have taken many things in my life, he continued, power, loyalty, obedience, but I will not take something that should be given only once without reverence. She swallowed, then nodded, resting her forehead against his chest. I am not ashamed, she said quietly. I just did not know how loud honesty could be. Something broke inside him, then something that had been frozen for years. He kissed her hair, gently holding her, until her breathing slowed, until the tremble faded. The scream still echoed in his ears, not as noise, but as revelation. He had believed nothing could surprise him. He had been wrong, and nothing would ever be the same again. Morning arrived without comfort. Light crept into the room, slowly touching the walls, without warmth, without invitation. He was awake before it came, sitting at the edge of the bed, staring at his hands, as if they belonged to someone else. She slept behind him, curled inward, breath shallow, not peaceful. He did not turn to look at her at first, because looking meant accepting what he had done and what it meant. He had crossed a line he had never seen until it was already behind him. Power had always been simple control, distant silence, but now silence felt like a wound. When she woke, she did not speak right away. She sensed the shift, the distance, the absence where closeness had been. Her fingers tightened in the sheet as she sat up watching his back. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked quietly. The words cut deeper than accusation ever could. "No," he said immediately, then paused, searching for something better, something true. "I did." She swung her legs over the side of the bed, heart pounding. "You stopped," she said. "I thought you regretted me." He stood abruptly, needing space, needing. "I regret that I did not protect you better," he said. "I should have known, I should have waited." She rose too, pulling the sheet around herself, not in shame, but in instinct. "I chose this," she said again, stronger this time. "You listened, you stopped, you did not take anything from me." That was not enough for him. "You trusted me," he said, "and trust is a weapon I swore never to use." She crossed the room, slowly stopping in front of him, forcing him to look at her. "I am not broken," she said. "I am not fragile glass, waiting to shatter. I am a woman who felt something new and did not know how to contain it." "Your scream," he began, then stopped. "It was the sound of truth," she finished, softly. "I did not know how to be quiet because no one ever taught me to hide." He closed his eyes. That honesty terrified him more than danger ever had. "I do not deserve what you gave," he said. She frowned, hurt flashing across her face. "Do not decide that for me." "I have ruined enough lives," he replied. "You should not be another one." She stepped back as if struck. "So what now?" she asked. "Now," he said hoarsely, "now I do what I should have done from the beginning." He turned away, leaving the room without another word. The days that followed were colder than any silence before. He avoided her deliberately. Meals were taken at different times, hallways cleared before she entered. Guards were instructed to keep distance under the guise of protection. She felt it immediately, the withdrawal, the punishment disguised as restraint. Fear returned, not of him, but of loss. She had given him honesty and received absence. On the third night, she found him in the library, surrounded by ledgers and shadows. She did not ask permission. She did not hesitate. "You cannot protect me by disappearing," she said. He did not look up. "I am protecting you from me." "I am not afraid of you," she said again. "You should be." She slammed her hand onto the table, making him finally look at her. "Stop deciding what I feel. Stop treating my choice like a mistake." "You were innocent," he said, "and I shattered that." "No," she said firmly. "You honored it. You stopped. You cared." "Caring is the danger," he replied. She took a step closer, then another, until she stood in his space, forcing him to acknowledge her presence. "I was never safe before I came here," she said softly. "My father ran my life, collapsed. Fear followed me everywhere. You did not create it. You stood between me and it." He swallowed, jaw tight. "If you stay," she continued, "it will get worse. There will be blood and enemies and nights where you do not come home clean. I see that now." "Then leave," he said. "I will not." "Why?" he demanded. "Because you saw me," she said, "and because I saw you, and because walking away would mean letting fear decide again." Silence fell heavy, but different than before. He realized then that his distance had not protected her. It had only wounded them both. "You are not a mistake," he said quietly. "Then stop treating me like one," she replied. Something in him yielded, not control, but surrender. He had frozen when he heard her scream, because he realized she was untouched. Now he realized something else just as terrifying. She was still choosing him. And that made her the most dangerous truth he had ever faced. Danger announced itself before dawn. Not with noise, but with absence. The guards at the east gate did not check in at shift change. The cameras blinked. Once, then went dark for 3 seconds. 3 seconds was an eternity in his world. He was on his feet, instantly pulling on his jacket, already issuing orders into the silence of the house. She woke to motion, not sound. The air felt wrong, heavy, charged. She knew that feeling now. It meant his world was awake. She left her room before anyone could stop her, moving barefoot down the corridor, heart pounding, not with fear, but certainty something was coming. He saw her as he rounded the corner and swore under his breath. "You should not be here," he said. "Neither should you," she replied. The words were simple, but they held ground. He did not have time to argue. He pulled her with him into the security room, walls glowing with fractured images, men, moving too fast, weapons drawn, shadows where light should have been. "Someone knows. She matters," one of the guards said quietly. That was the sentence that changed everything. He went still for half a second, then turned to her, eyes dark with fury and something worse, guilt. "This is my fault," he said. She shook her head. "No, this is choice meeting consequence. Do not steal my agency again by calling it blame." He stared at her, then nodded once. "Stay here," he ordered. "I will not hide," she said. "You will live," he snapped. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "I will survive if you treat me like a partner, not a liability." Another screen flared, showing movement at the perimeter, testing, again probing, waiting. "They are not attacking," she observed. "They are watching." He followed her gaze, impressed despite himself. "They want confirmation," he said. "They want to see if you are real." "Then let them see," she said. He turned sharply. "No." "Yes," she insisted. "If I disappear, they will keep coming. If they see I am not hidden, they will hesitate." "You would stand exposed," he said, incredulous. "I already am," she replied. "I walked into your world and stayed." The silence stretched taut, dangerous. Finally, he nodded once sharply. "Very well, but you do not leave my side." They moved together through the house, guards flanking them, but keeping distance. The dawn light painted the estate in pale gray, making everything feel unreal, like a held breath. They stepped onto the terrace overlooking the grounds. She stood beside him, shoulders squared, hands steady. A figure moved near the trees, then another, then vanished again. A message sent. He felt her fingers brush his, not asking, just there. "I'm not afraid," she said quietly. "I am," he replied. "Of losing control. Of losing you." The words escaped before he could stop them. She looked up at him, eyes soft but unflinching. "Then let them see what you are willing to protect." He wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close, deliberate, unmistakable. He did not hide her, he did not shield her, he claimed her presence openly. The movement stopped. Minutes passed, then longer. The tension slowly bled from the air. They left. The threat was not gone, but the message was delivered. Inside the house, the world resumed its rhythm, but something fundamental had shifted. He turned to her, lifting her chin gently. "You should never have to prove your worth with danger," he said. "Then do not make me invisible," she replied. He pressed his forehead to hers, breathing her, in grounding himself. "I will not hide you again." "Good," she said, "because I am done being quiet about who I choose." That night the silence returned, but it was no longer empty. It was filled with resolve. Enemies had learned she mattered. And he had learned something far more dangerous. He was willing to burn the world to keep her standing beside him. The warning came too late to stop it, but early enough to make it hurt. He felt it before anyone spoke, the shift in the city, the tightening of invisible lines, the way loyal men grew quiet and enemies grew bold. This was not a test. Anymore, this was a decision made somewhere dark by people who believed love made kings weak. She saw it in him before he said a word. "You are preparing for war," she said softly. "Yes." "Against them or yourself?" she asked. He did not answer, because the truth was both. They had moved her from room to room over the past days, never alone, always guarded, always watched. She understood now what it meant to matter in his world. It was not safety, it was attention, sharp, constant, and dangerous. "I can leave," she said that night, standing in the doorway of his office. "I can disappear, and they will lose interest." "No," he said immediately. "You do not own my choices," she replied calmly, "and I will not be the reason blood is spilled." "You are not the reason," he said. "You are the excuse they are using." "Then remove the excuse," she said. He crossed the room in 3 strides, stopping inches from her face, voice low and fierce. "I will not trade you for peace." "What if peace costs less than war?" she asked. "It always costs more," he replied. "It just charges interest later." A guard entered, interrupting them. A meeting had been requested, neutral ground, 1 man against 1. A final attempt to settle before violence became uncontrollable. They want me alone, he said after the guard left. She went still. You will not go, she said. I must. That is a death sentence. Or an ending, he said. She shook her head fiercely. I will not lose you to pride. This is not pride, he said, this is responsibility. To whom, she demanded. To the men who follow me to the world, I built to you. She stepped closer, pressing her hand to his chest, feeling his heart beat fast and real. Then choose me, she said, choose us. He closed his eyes, breathing through the storm inside him. If I go, he said quietly, and I do not return, you will be protected, everything is arranged. She laughed bitterly. You still think protection replaces presence? I think love makes people reckless, he said. She lifted his face, forcing him to look at her. Love makes people brave, she said. Reckless is pretending you can live without it. The silence stretched tight enough to snap. Finally, he spoke. I will go, he said, but not because I believe I must, because I refuse to let others decide the shape of our future. Her eyes filled, but she did not cry. Then I am coming, she said. No. Yes. You will stay in the car, he said. You will not be seen, you will not intervene. She nodded once. I trust you, she said. The words weighed more than any weapon. The warehouse was cold and empty. When they arrived, lights humming above concrete, stained with history. He left her with guards and walked inside alone, every step steady, every breath controlled. The meeting was brief. Words were spoken, lines, crossed, guns drawn, and in the end, only one man walked out. He returned to the car, blood on his knuckles, breath uneven. She was already outside, running to him, hands shaking, as she touched his face, his shoulders, his chest. You are here, she whispered. I am here, he said, holding her tight. In that moment, surrounded by darkness and consequence, he understood something with terrifying clarity. He had not survived because he was ruthless. He had survived because someone was waiting for him to come back. And that made her not his weakness, but his reason to win. The city looked different when the war ended, not quieter, not kinder, but honest. He stood at the window, watching the lights breathe below him, knowing that every glow hid a choice, a consequence, a life moving forward. Because another one had stopped, she stood behind him, close enough that he could feel her warmth without touching. And that was new too, the ability to exist beside someone, without armor. It is over, she said softly. Yes. For good. As good as things ever are in my world, he replied. She stepped into his space, turning him toward her, forcing him to meet her eyes. There was no fear there now, only clarity, and something steady. Then tell me the truth, she said, not the version meant to protect me, the real one. He took a breath deeper than any he had taken in years. The debt was never real, he said quietly. Her eyes widened, but she did not pull away. Your father owed money, yes, but not enough to justify keeping you here, not enough to bind your life to mine. Then why, she asked. Because when you walked into my office, you looked at me, and did not look away, he said, because you did not beg, because you chose to stand instead of run. And I used the debt as an excuse to keep you close before I understood what that meant. Silence held them, but it did not hurt. You trapped me, she said. I gave you a cage, and pretended it was protection, he admitted. She searched his face, weighing the truth, not angry, not broken. I stayed because I chose to, she said, not because of the debt. I know, he said, and that terrifies me more than anything I have ever faced. Why? Because you stayed after the fear, after the scream, after the blood, after seeing exactly who I am. She touched his face gently. You froze that night, not because I screamed, she said. You froze because you realized I had never been owned by anyone, and you were afraid of being the man who would take that from me. His throat tightened. Yes. She smiled softly, then rested her forehead against his. Then listen to me, she said. I was not taken, I was not ruined, I was not broken. I chose you, and I choose you now, knowing everything. He closed his eyes, letting the truth settle into him. I cannot give you peace, he said. I cannot give you safety or a quiet life. I do not want quiet, she replied. I want real. He stepped back, reaching into his jacket, pulling out a small box simple. Unmarked, his hands did not shake, but his heart did. You are free, he said. You have been free since the night I almost lost you. But I am asking you to stay, not because of power, not because of debt, not because of fear. He opened the box, revealing a ring, understated, strong, unmistakable. I am asking because loving you has made me dangerous in a way I have never been before. He paused, then finished. Because now I have something worth living for. Tears filled her eyes, but she smiled through them. You were never the monster they feared, she said. You were a man starving in silence. She took the ring from the box herself, sliding it onto her finger. Yes, she said, I will stay. I will stand. I will choose you again and again. He pulled her into his arms, holding her, as the city moved on below them, unchanged, unaware. The final truth settled into him, then not as regret but as revelation. The scream that had frozen him was never about innocence. It was the sound of a woman refusing to hide herself. And loving her had not made him weak. It had made him free.